Imagine waking up one day and your whole city's turned into a deep freezer. The temperature dropped like crazy. Most of the world's population gone. People trapped in their homes with no electricity, no water, no food, and no way to keep warm. It was just a slow countdown to starvation. But there was one guy who wasn't caught off guard. He actually saw it coming and got ready. While everyone else was struggling, he was chillin' with a full stomach and a warm bed. Of course, he wasn't handing things out for free. If someone wanted food, they had to pay a heavy price. But things hadn't always been smooth for him. Back in the day before the world froze, a star exploded or something, and that sent Earth into a new ice age. Jang Yi, the guy in question, had a job at a Walmart warehouse, so he had access to plenty of supplies. When things got bad, he had a stash ready. Too bad the girl he liked teamed up with some neighbors, broke into his house, and took everything. She even admitted she tricked him into opening the door. On his deathbed, angry and betrayed, he swore that if he ever saw her again, even in hell, he'd make her pay. Then, out of nowhere, he wakes up months before the apocalypse. He's stunned, but now that he knows what's coming, he's got a second shot. This time, there's no falling for fake people, no mercy for those who wronged him. He plans to prep harder than anyone and maybe even enjoy watching those selfish neighbors suffer. While figuring out his plan, he notices this strange light flash by and suddenly realizes he's got a crazy new power. He can store things in a separate dimension, kind of like a video game inventory. His goal: fill that space with enough food and supplies to survive for years. First stop, treating himself. He hits up a fancy restaurant, eats like a king, drops a ton of money on his credit card, because in a few months, money won't matter anymore. Meanwhile, the same girl who backstabbed him, Fang Yuqing, spots him at the restaurant with her friend. They're confused, thinking he suddenly became rich. Her friend jokes that he's still hung up on her and might just spoil her again. But Jang Yi isn't falling for that. He remembers how she acted all sweet and innocent in his past life, only to rob him blind, literally took everything, even messed up his arm. Right now he wants to get back at her, but he knows jail isn't worth it. He'll wait. So he flashes his bank card and casually asks if they want to join him for some supermarket shopping. They agree, thinking they'll benefit somehow. While shopping, they wonder why he's buying so much. He jokes that you never know when the world might end, better safe than sorry. They start complaining about doing all the heavy lifting, acting like he owes them something for helping. He just smiles to himself, knowing payback's coming. At the checkout, his aunt and her bratty grandson show up. The kid tries to steal his cart and the aunt demands he share. Jang Yi snatches it back, says he'll eat it all himself. The kid throws a tantrum and starts yelling at him, so Jang Yi snaps back, threatening to knock his teeth out if he doesn't quit it. The kid bursts into tears. His aunt scolds him for arguing with a child, saying she'll pay for the chocolate later. He pulls out a QR code and says, "Not later, right now. Pay or go buy your own." He leaves them both fuming. Back at home, Fang Yuqing and her friend try to flirt their way back into his good graces, but he slams the door on their faces. After that, he quietly stores all the food in his magical inventory to see if it lasts. He's got a plan this time, and nothing's going to stop him. Jang Yi still had a long checklist. He needed to build a solid fortress, something that could handle the freezing hell that was coming. Heating systems, medical supplies, and weapons were all on the list. There were still a few months left before the deep freeze hit, and in that time he had to sell off whatever he could, stack up more resources, and get everything in place. The next morning he checked his storage space. Good news, the food stayed just as fresh as the day he stored it. Bad news, anything alive couldn't be stored. Knowing that, he grabbed his phone and rang up a top-tier restaurant. He told them he was throwing a 3-day, all-you-can-eat party and ordered enough food to feed an army. Next, he dug out his property papers and went straight to the bank. His apartment. He used it as collateral for a fat loan. His thinking was simple: money wouldn't mean much after the world collapsed, so why not use it while he could? The bank manager mentioned that the interest rate would be on the high side. Jang Yi just grinned and said it didn't matter. He walked out with millions, knowing he'd either pay it back later or lose his house and car, not that they'd matter once everything froze. After that, he hit up a top security company. A manager approached, offering suggestions. But Jang Yi had his own ideas. He wanted reinforced walls made from aviation-grade materials, bulletproof glass on the balcony, a full air filtration system, and 360-degree surveillance with 0 blind spots. Oh, and the front door needed to be as tough as a bank vault. He also casually mentioned needing weapons. The manager was a bit shocked by that last part. He could arrange everything except the weapons. Zhang Yi figured that with all these upgrades, his home was turning into a real fortress. The cost, a few million. He paid the deposit without flinching and told them to start building right away. Weapons were still on his mind though, so he contacted someone from a hunting club and managed to get his hands on a few crossbows. By the time he got back home, those giant food orders he placed earlier had arrived several trucks worth from a luxury hotel. Neighbors couldn't help but stare. It looked like the guy had spent a fortune, and they were right. He didn't waste any time. Everything got sent straight into the storage space. With that done, he knew he wouldn't have to worry about food for years. The very next day, construction workers from the security company arrived and started the fortress project. As expected, his neighbors gathered around, whispering and laughing. They joked that he'd probably lost his mind, but he didn't care. He knew they'd stop laughing once the disaster came. Later, he went to his company's manager and offered double the price for all available medical supplies, even the stuff that was already promised to others. The deal went through, and he slowly started transporting it all back home. All of this activity didn't go unnoticed. Fang Yuking, the girl who had betrayed him in his past life, asked if something was going on. She acted like she'd suddenly started thinking about him again. Zhang Yi ignored her completely, which irritated her. The old him would have done anything for her, this new version couldn't care less. Even his best friend found the whole thing funny. She joked that if something serious were really coming, the government would announce it. For now, she figured she just needed to stick close to Zhang Yi and ride the wave. Zhang Yi's fortress was finally complete. Every floor of the building had surveillance systems installed by the company, and he was honestly impressed by how well they handled everything. Just one final delivery was left: truckloads of bottled water. The drivers came one after another, and among them was his Uncle Yu, who also lived nearby. The man looked a bit puzzled seeing so many gallons of water being unloaded. In his previous life, Uncle Yu had actually been one of the few kind people to him. So Zhang Yi quietly leaned in and told him, "This winter's going to be brutal. Better start stocking up, just in case." Uncle Yu didn't seem convinced at first, but something about Zhang Yi's expression made him think twice. "Get back to work, you lazy old man," Zhang Yi joked, waving him off with a smirk. In the weeks that followed, he stayed focused, spending every bit of cash he had left on more supplies and practicing his archery skills daily. The freezing point was getting close, and the weather had already started acting strange. With only a few days to go, everything felt off. Then the day finally came. At work, where he was a stock supervisor, he casually brewed tea for his coworkers. Once everyone had taken a sip, they slowly started passing out. After cutting the power to the security cameras, he got to work. It was time. He moved quickly, emptying the Walmart warehouse of everything: food, fuel, equipment. While going through the boxes, one in particular stood out: cold-resistant gear the company had just ordered. It was designed to handle temperatures way below zero. Perfect. To finish off the act, Zhang Yi took the same sleeping tea and passed out like the others. A few hours later, someone shook him awake, panicking. The entire warehouse had been cleaned out, nothing left. Zhang Yi played dumb, eyes wide. "Wait, what? Everything's gone?" The manager was on the phone, furious. He suspected an inside job. Zhang Yi stood there, looking confused, acting like he had no clue. "If I was that smart, I wouldn't be working here," he joked, keeping his cool. Everyone was taken in for questioning. But there were no clues, no signs of forced entry, and the cameras had caught nothing. The cops were stumped. No one could figure out how the entire inventory vanished in a few hours. Of course, they didn't know it had all been quietly teleported into another dimension. After the questioning, the police told everyone not to leave the city. "You're all suspects," one of them warned. Zhang Yi just nodded, thinking, "No problem, I'm not planning on leaving the house anyway." By December 10th, the news was everywhere. People couldn't believe that tons of supplies had disappeared without a single trace, and right on cue, the snow began falling heavily for the first time. Zhang Yi knew this was it: the cold apocalypse had officially begun. A few days later, the shockwave from a distant star explosion hit the planet. The temperature dropped overnight, plummeting faster than anyone could have imagined. Watching the snow fall through his window, Zhang Yi muttered to himself, "This time, things will go differently." Panic was setting in. The building's apartment group chat was full of anxious messages. No one had ever seen snow like this in their city. But Zhang Yi, watching from the sidelines, knew the harsh truth. For a lot of them, this would be the first and last time they saw snow. He remembered all too well how the snowstorm in his past life had raged for 3 whole months. The temperatures kept sinking, and those who didn't prepare either starved or froze to death. By the second day of this new freeze, the snow outside his complex was already piled up over a meter high. Even with their heaters cranked to full, people inside were shivering and desperate. But inside Jang Yi's apartment, things were very different. With multiple heaters running and all the supplies he'd gathered, he was warm, full, and comfortable, ready to wait it all out while the world outside turned to ice. After a solid night's sleep, Jang Yi was woken up by his phone buzzing like crazy. It was none other than Fang Yuking, acting all innocent and playful on the call. She started whining, asking if he knew the temperature had dropped drastically and why he didn't tell her anything, even though she likes him so much. Now she was freezing, stuck with nothing but instant noodles. Jang Yi just chuckled and ended the call right in her face. A few moments later, she shamelessly texted him asking for food, like it was no big deal. He rolled his eyes, then got a cheeky idea. He snapped a photo of a juicy Wagyu steak and a glass of fancy French wine, both of which she instantly recognized as high-end stuff. Her craving kicked in immediately. She messaged, trying to act cute again, saying they should eat and drink together. Jang Yi replied, "Sure, just head to the store and get it yourself," then left her on read. She clearly wasn't happy about it, but calmed herself down because, let's face it, she still wanted something from him. Meanwhile, Jang Yi went back to enjoying his premium meal totally unbothered. While relaxing, he glanced over at his iPad screen, which was showing the building's surveillance cameras. On screen was Aunt Lin, the manager, trying to keep the peace downstairs. She told everyone not to panic and claimed this extreme weather would only last a couple of days. The neighborhood committee, she said, would take care of them. She even warned that hoarding supplies was forbidden and that anyone caught would be reported. But not everyone was buying it. Someone asked her how she could be so sure the storm would end soon. Others chimed in, pointing out that if they didn't stock up now, she'd be the one to blame if people ran out of food. In response, Aunt Lin doubled down, saying the committee would handle it, and suddenly pointed fingers at Jang Yi, warning him not to cause trouble. He didn't even flinch, just shrugged it off and walked back into his warm, well-stocked fortress. A week passed. The snow kept piling up. Then Aunt Lin popped into the group chat asking if Jang Yi, since he's young and all, could clear the snow from the building's entrance. He replied, "What's the point? It's like trying to drain a river with a spoon." Clearly not getting the answer she wanted, she demanded again, this time saying it was an official order from the neighborhood committee and anyone who refused would be blamed for any problems. Jang Yi wasn't having it. "Why not ask the rich guys in the building?" he suggested. "Chun Jiang runs a construction company, he's got workers for this. And Xing Song? He's loaded. Let him pay someone." That hit a nerve. Lin's authority in the group chat basically crumbled. Frustrated, she tagged both Chun Jiang and Xing Song, telling them to come help with the snow. Chun Jiang was instantly pissed off, especially with both Lin and Jang Yi, as if Jang Yi had taken over the whole building. Meanwhile, Xing Song dropped a voice message sounding annoyed, saying he was too busy making money and sent a photo to prove it. Lin didn't even dare argue with the rich guy, but kept blaming Jang Yi for the chaos. He didn't even respond, just let her rant into the void. That wasn't enough for her, though. She called him directly, clearly losing it. But Jang Yi didn't hold back this time. "If you keep running your mouth and bothering me, I swear I'll kill you," he said, his voice calm but deadly serious. Aunt Lin went dead silent on the other end, shaking with fear. She ended the call and stayed quiet in the group. While he was having his meal, a loud bang echoed from the front door. Outside, Chen Jiang was yelling, accusing him of stirring things up in the group chat and turning others against him. Said he was going to end him right there. Jang Yi didn't panic. He picked up his bow and walked to the door while Chen Jiang kept kicking it. Without saying much, Jang Yi aimed through the tiny gap and asked who was going to be the one to finish the other first. In one quick move, he shot an arrow straight at Chen Jiang's shin. Peeking through the peephole, he saw the guy lying on the ground, groaning non-stop. No one would have guessed that this calm, harmless-looking guy could act like that. What Chen Jiang didn't realize was that this was just the start of Jang Yi's payback. With the freezing cold, things could get worse for him. If he didn't get help soon, he might just lose his leg or his life. He barely made it to the elevator, not believing that this kid, someone he'd only come across a few times, could do that to him. It hit him then Jang Yi had actually wanted to kill him. That realization shook him. He grabbed his phone and tried to call for help, but the snowstorm had cut everything off. No one could come, so he had to take care of it himself. Using the cold to numb the pain, he pulled the arrow out on his own. Then, furious, he grabbed his phone again and sent a message in the group, threatening Jang Yi and warning him to watch what he said. Claimed he'd come back and finish him. But Jiangyi wasn't scared. He replied straight up that if Chen Jiang showed up again, he wouldn't leave alive. That message sent a shockwave through the group chat. People couldn't believe someone had actually stood up to Chen Jiang like that. Raging, Chen Jiang made some calls. Soon enough, a small army showed up at Jiangyi's place, all of them carrying some kind of weapon. Baldy, their leader, shouted that Jiangyi had crossed the line and today was his last day. But when he went to break the door down with a sword, the sword snapped and he got thrown back. Shaken, he realized the door wasn't wood, it was full on metal. Suddenly, it wasn't just about revenge, they were wondering how many enemies this kid had to protect himself like that. Inside, watching them through the cameras, Jiangyi figured they looked weak and probably starving. That gave him an idea. He grabbed a hose, hooked it to the kitchen tap, and waited. As the door opened just a bit, the group froze for a second, confused. No arrow, no danger, right? That's when the freezing water sprayed out, hitting them all hard. Some fell right away, others tried to run, but only a few got away. Seeing that made Jiangyi feel pretty proud. Out in that weather, cold water was more brutal than any weapon. At Chen Jiang's place, the few who escaped were shivering and huddled together. Furious, Chen Jiang demanded to know what went down. They explained everything, how Jiangyi had reinforced his door and how he used water to freeze them out. Chen Jiang wasn't letting it go. He ordered men to guard Jiangyi's place round the clock. Told them to catch him the second he stepped outside. Meanwhile, in another part of the neighborhood, an older man and his group tried to clear snow and make a path to the supermarket. But like Jiangyi said, the snow was falling faster than they could shovel. Eventually, they gave up and turned back. Watching them, Jiangyi quietly thought about how human strength alone couldn't win against something this big. Even though the news kept telling everyone things were under control, Jiangyi knew the truth. Most of the world's population had already frozen to death in this snow disaster. That hit hard. Then he got a message from someone close to his heart, checking in to see if he was okay. She had no idea how serious things were. If she did, she might have been stuck there with him in that cold chaos. Jiangyi casually replied that he was doing fine. She mentioned she was out of food and reminded him that he had stocked up a ton, hinting he should share some. Said she'd treat him to dinner later as thanks. In response, Jiangyi sent her a picture of a fancy lobster dish already plated up. That pushed her buttons. She got annoyed, thinking, no wonder this guy's still single. In her mind, whatever chance he had with her was gone. Then her best friend chimed in, trying to guilt-trip him by saying he made Fangu Chin sad. But Jiangyi wasn't having it, just called it weak drama. That kind of brush-off made the friend back off, switching to a softer approach. Said the snow wouldn't last forever, so why not be nice and help the neighbors out? Maybe he could even win Fangu Chin over. That'd be a win for him, right? Still, Jiangyi didn't care, just dropped a dry "oh" in reply. That really ticked them off. Suddenly, this so-called loser was acting all cold, confident, and untouchable. Yuqing, confused by this new energy, gave up trying to understand him. She figured, fine, if this dude wasn't going to play the role, they could just find another one with less pride and more need. Enter Zhou Ping, another guy she roped in. He showed up in a hurry, carrying a huge bag of food, basically everything he had. Before Yuqing could start her usual sweet talk routine, her friend slammed the door in his face. From the look on her face, she wasn't even fazed. All she cared about now was getting back at Jiangyi for ignoring her. That extra bag of supplies came in handy. Time passed and the snow just kept piling up. One day, while Jiangyi was casually munching on a piece of chicken, waiting for the real chaos to kick in, the power across the entire block went out. No lights, no heat, nothing. Neighbors started stepping out of their homes, all asking the same thing. Do you have electricity? Without power or water, heaters stopped working. It got cold enough that even hiding under layers of blankets couldn't save people. Jiangyi wasn't worried. He was already turning on a generator, one he either bought in advance or, well, found during a warehouse trip. That was his style. Not far away, Aunt Lin, a neighborhood committee member, was shivering while trying to keep her little grandson warm. She hadn't expected the storm to drag on like this. Suddenly, she got a private message in the chat group, a warning meant for her eyes only. The message claimed this snowstorm was a once-in-a-century disaster. It said the world might be facing a huge extinction-level event. Major cities were already falling. Stock up fast, it said. The message shook her. She realized she needed to act before the rest of the residents saw this. Her plan? Get everyone to hand over their food supplies while they were still clueless. She dropped a calming message in the owner's group saying there was no need to panic. Claimed workers were already fixing the water and power situation. Then said the authorities had given the neighborhood committee full control to manage everything. Anyone who didn't cooperate would be reported and taken in for questioning. People weren't happy with this, especially Chen Jiang. But if it sounded like a police order, they couldn't exactly push back. Then Aunt Lin dropped the second message. Due to how serious the storm was, the committee had decided to collect all supplies from everyone and redistribute them equally. A help your neighbors kind of move. Jiang Yi read that and instantly remembered how this played out in his past life. Same old trick. She took everything from the residents back then too. What tipped him off again this time was a private message from her directly to him. She called him her nephew and said she saw him buying tons of stuff from the warehouse, 3 full truckloads. She basically told him it was time to give back. That message flipped a switch in Jiang Yi. Furious, he sent a voice note back, said she was lying and trying to act all innocent. Claimed he had eaten everything already and had nothing left. Even joked that when they came around collecting, maybe they could give him something. That voice note nearly gave the old lady a heart attack. Her whole plan ruined in seconds. But realizing that she and her grandson still needed Jiang Yi to survive, she calmed down. Tried to keep it nice. Said it was an official order, and if he followed it, she'd make sure the organization heard about his kindness once the storm passed. If it were the old days, Jiang Yi might have believed her. But now, he wasn't buying it. Still picking at his teeth, he replied, totally unfazed, that he really had nothing left. Said if she had some extra instant noodles lying around, she should send them his way. When Tia Lin read Jiang Yi's message, she completely lost it. Snapped back at him, saying refusing to hand over supplies was the same as going against the entire organization, and that she'd definitely report him. Jiang Yi wasn't fazed. He shut her down instantly, calling her a nobody. That stung hard. Tia Lin was so mad she chucked her phone at the wall, cursing him out loud. But when things didn't go her way with him, she shifted her attention to the rest of the building. If she could trick just a few others, it would still work out. And after a few days of faking concern and lying through her teeth, some of the residents actually bought it. They brought their food right to her door. Watching it all unfold, Jiang Yi just shook his head, thinking how dumb people were. The world was clearly falling apart, and these folks were still trusting the wrong people. With supplies drying up everywhere, people were either going to starve or turn into hunters to survive. Eventually, more residents started getting suspicious. They tagged Tia Lin in the chat, demanding answers. Where's the food you promised to share? We're starving. Give it now or I'll eat you instead. Tia Lin finally dropped the act. She mocked them all, saying, only a fool would give away something they earned. You think I did all this work to feed you losers? Right as she was feeling powerful, her phone buzzed. Seeing Chen Jiang's name pop up, her hands got cold. She nervously asked what he wanted from a harmless old lady. Chen Jiang's voice was like ice. So you really went and took everyone's food, huh? She tried to play innocent again, saying it was all under the committee's orders, she was just following instructions. But Chen Jiang wasn't buying it. He told her this was perfect because a bunch of starving people were already waiting outside her place to help distribute the supplies. Tia Lin scrambled to come up with another excuse. Said the food hadn't been sorted yet, and some folks hadn't handed theirs in, so they couldn't start giving it out. Too late. Chen Jiang and his crew barged into her place. At this point, nobody cared about rules. He slapped her across the face and said he'd be the one dishing out justice today. Meanwhile, Jiang Yi was chilling in his place, chewing on a sausage while watching everything go down on his cameras. He even recorded the whole thing and sent it to the building's group chat. Back at Tia Lin's place, she realized they were clearing out all the food and begged them to stop. Claimed some of it was her personal stash, stuff she needed to feed herself and her grandson. Chen Jiang didn't care. He kicked her again. In a panic, her grandson grabbed a bread knife and stabbed one of the guys in the crotch. The guy, screaming in pain, kicked the kid across the room. Some of the others just laughed like it was a joke. Chen Jiang shrugged it off, saying this was the price of cheating people. The other residents watching through the chat weren't even upset. They cheered him on, calling it karma. Good job, Chen Jiang. That's what you do to scammers. Jiang Yi, still calm as ever, just muttered to himself that they didn't get the bigger picture. If Chen Jiang could raid her place today, whose door would he break down next? But for now, it didn't matter to him. His solid steel door wasn't going to fall anytime soon. Later on, Tia Lin came crawling back into the group chat asking for help. Said her grandson was seriously injured and they needed emergency medicine, hemostatic drugs, antibiotics, anything. She begged, said Dr. Zio was ready to operate but needed supplies urgently. That name made Jiang Yi pause. In his past life, Dr. Zio was one of the kindest people he'd met. Now, seeing how things were turning out, it made sense why his eyes always looked so conflicted. Tia Lin promised she'd be forever grateful to anyone who helped. But the group's reaction? Silence. Nobody wanted to risk anything for her. She had burned too many bridges, and Zhang Yi, he just thought that's what karma looks like. Outside, the snowstorm had dragged on for over a week. Everything was frozen, streets buried under white. Even if the kid somehow made it through surgery, how would he survive without food? Reports were saying this wasn't just a fluke, this was a 1,000-year snowstorm. Entire countries were buried. In some northern cities, temperatures had dropped below 40 degrees C. The world was quietly freezing to death. Many residents who had tried to flee south ended up freezing to death along the way. In the group chat, Tia Lin was at it again, begging for help. "My dear grandson hasn't eaten in days. He's just a child. Are you really going to watch him starve to death?" She offered to pay for any food. Seeing this, some residents started selling packs of instant noodles for ridiculous prices, offering them as help to Tia Lin. Zhang Yi, always observing from the sidelines, found the whole situation laughable. People still didn't get it. The apocalypse was right in front of them, and soon enough, they'd realize they couldn't eat money. Meanwhile, Xingzong, aware of the impending collapse, started buying food from anyone selling it. He knew well that in this new world, money was useless and food was the real currency. Then, a single mother posted her own plea in the group. She said her daughter was about to starve and begged for any help. Zhang Yi, remembering them from his past life, thought they would be fine. They had managed to survive for a long time before, so he wasn't too concerned. It had been days since the freezing storm began, and as usual, Zhang Yi was comfortably at home, enjoying the warmth of his surroundings. Just as he was settling in, his phone rang. Seeing who it was, he couldn't help but chuckle. He answered the video call and greeted them, teasing, "You look a little thinner. Eating well, huh?" The sight of the chicken on his plate made both of them drool, and they asked how he still had so much food left in this cold weather. He mocked them casually, "I've got a fireplace, you know. It's nice and warm here, thinking of going out for a jog to get some fresh air." Yuching, clearly envious, replied, "You're amazing. Can I come over and take a bath at your place?" Without missing a beat, Zhang Yi rejected her. He joked, "If you want food, go find your rich boy. Bye now." Yuching, furious at being mocked, threw her phone on the ground, calling him a loser. Meanwhile, her best friend tried to defend Zhang Yi, praising him for being way cooler than the rich boys they used to know. In the end, the two friends ended up fighting, one refusing to accept being called dumb. Meanwhile, the government finally acknowledged the snow disaster. A TV announcement explained that the power supply would only be available at night, with enough voltage for just low-power devices. All major power plants had been shut down, and there was no end in sight to the disaster. Now everyone knew that the ice storm was more than just an inconvenience, it was a global catastrophe. After a few days of tension, Yuching and her best friend decided to take more direct action. Yuching called Zhou Pang and told him a fabricated story about how Zhang Yi was trying to tarnish his reputation just because he had food. Zhou Pang, enraged by this, agreed that Zhang Yi was a scumbag and needed to be dealt with. Taking it a step further, Yuching convinced Zhou Pang to rob Zhang Yi's house. Soon enough, the trio arrived at Zhang Yi's door, each hiding a kitchen knife. Zhang Yi, watching everything through his cameras, saw right through their plan. He knew they didn't realize the cameras were on them, so he waited, amused by their cluelessness. They knocked and tried to play it off as if they wanted to exchange medicine for food. Furious at their attempt to deceive him, Zhang Yi decided to teach them a lesson. Initially, he thought about using the water hose to spray them, but then his eyes landed on the overflowing trash can nearby. An idea struck him. With a grin, he grabbed the hose and sprayed sewage all over them, covering them in filth. He wanted food. "Well, this is what you deserve," he said, watching them stumble around in the mess. "Enjoy your meal." Zhou Pang, enraged, struck the door, but his hand only throbbed in pain. Laughing it off, Zhang Yi spoke through the speaker, letting them know that the door was made of steel and they couldn't open it. After a while, Zhang Yi grew bored of the whole situation and went to sleep. But he was suddenly jolted awake by the sound of a gunshot. Even though he knew the law of the jungle would eventually take over, the sudden shot still startled him. He quickly checked the surveillance footage on his tablet and saw that Chen Jiang and his crew were going from house to house, stealing supplies from everyone. It was clear that many of the residents were suffering the same fate Zhang Yi had endured in his past life during the apocalypse. Chen Jiang even sent photos of his successes to the building group chat, boasting about how he controlled all the buildings now. As Jiang Yi observed the chaos unfold, a new group chat was created where several residents were condemning Chen Zhang's actions. The messages were filled with anger and there was talk of fighting back. Jiang Yi, amused by it all, read the messages and thought about what to do. A retired veteran in the chat proposed leading an attack on Chen Zhang, and many supported the idea. The veteran, who was known as Uncle, suggested that they needed young volunteers for security and weapons. But then a woman spoke up, questioning whether they could trust Uncle, given that Aunt Lin had stolen from the residents just days earlier. This caused a divide among the residents. Half wanted to go after Chen Zhang, while the others didn't trust Uncle. As the discussions continued in the chat, Jiang Yi continued to watch everything unfold through the cameras, casually eating something as he observed Chen Zhang raiding more houses. Jiang Yi realized that something had to be done. He couldn't allow someone like Chen Zhang to just walk around taking advantage of people and shooting them in the head. It wasn't fair to everyone. The next morning, a resident who had opposed helping the veteran now called for help in the group. She said her door was being forced open and she would be next. Before long, the inevitable happened and she was dragged out of her house. Yuqing and her friends, now nervous, realized they needed a plan to avoid being the next targets. The girl suggested spreading a rumor that Jiang Yi had a stockpile of supplies and that everyone should join forces to take over his house. They even added him to the new group to let him know, but Jiang Yi didn't care. He simply said, "It's okay." They argued that he should help protect them from Chen Zhang, but Jiang Yi's response was a simple, "Leave the group." This sudden change in his attitude left Yuqing and the others stunned. How had this loser from just a few months ago become so firm? They started planning how to break into Jiang Yi's house and steal his supplies. The smart glasses guy suggested they pick the lock and his friend, an expert lock picker, would take care of it. They decided to bring umbrellas to protect themselves from the water and garbage Jiang Yi might throw at them again. Jiang Yi, however, was one step ahead. Watching through the surveillance cameras, he activated the high-voltage defense system. The lock picker, realizing the door couldn't be opened, was electrocuted, exploding in shock and dying instantly. Jiang Yi felt no remorse. The smart guy with glasses, seeing the result, cursed Jiang Yi, calling him a monster, and demanded he come out. Jiang Yi, unfazed, grabbed his crossbow and shot an arrow through the door, hitting the smart guy in the left arm. The other two rushed to help their injured friend, only to be hit by arrows as well. In the end, Yuqing and the others fled, returning home defeated. The three who had been shot with arrows lay groaning on the ground in pain. One of the girls slapped Yuqing's face, blaming her for all of it. Yuqing, still desperate, argued that she didn't know Jiang Yi had crossbows at home. She claimed that last time he just sprayed water in garbage. Zhou Peng as always defended her, but the smart guy with glasses quickly reminded everyone that the most important thing now was to take care of the wounds. They called Dr. Zhouer, who came to check on the injuries of the three. She was surprised and grimly explained that the wounds were so deep, and without professional equipment, they had less than a 30% chance of survival. Furthermore, the iron arrows were rusty, and without antibiotics it would almost certainly lead to death. The girl, who was a relative of one of the injured, cried when she heard the diagnosis. She blamed Jiang Yi, accusing him of being cruel and doing it on purpose. Dr. Zhouer, still unsure who was behind the attack, left a final warning. They needed medicine soon, or removing the arrows would be the end of them. The smart guy with glasses at this point was beside himself with anger. He demanded that Jiang Yi get them the medicine they desperately needed. Yuqing, recalling how Jiang Yi had suddenly changed and started stockpiling supplies at home, told the others that he must have medicine because she had seen him gathering it before. However, she still tried to justify everything, claiming that no one had harmed him. They just wanted to rob him, but since they failed and got hurt, it was somehow his fault. From the corner, the girl, who had been listening to everything, thought to herself that Jiang Yi probably wasn't the type of person they thought, but they deserved whatever was coming. Another girl, however, blamed Yuqing for everything and demanded she figure out how to convince Jiang Yi to give them the medicine. This time, even the loser Zhou Peng agreed that without the medicine, they would all die. The plan was simple. They would try calling Jiang Yi. Yuqing cried over the phone, saying that the boys were dying and begging him to help. Jiang Yi's response was cold and uncaring, asking her why he should help. "Everyone has to die sooner or later," he said dismissively. The crazy guy's sister grabbed the phone from Yuqing and argued that it was Jiang Yi's duty to help because he had injured the boys with those rusty arrows. Jiang Yi, however, remained unfazed, saying that he had used those arrows for them to die anyway. To further insult them, Jiang Yi added, "I won't help, but Yuqing can come live with me if she wants." The girl quickly grabbed the phone again and in desperation said, "Yes, she's yours now. Do whatever you want with her." Jiang Yi, in his usual nonchalant manner, responded, "Just come. You can come now." Yuqing's friend tried to stop her from going to Jiang Yi's house, but Yuqing pushed her away. Her cousin, one of the boys who had been shot, slapped Yuqing in the face and called her a schemer. She then turned to Zhou Pang, asking for his help to convince them to let Yuqing go. She claimed that Zhou Pang was a good man, though poor and weak, and that Jiang Yi's brother was the one who could make her happy. The situation was dire and everyone was in pain. Yuqing, now bolting to Jiang Yi's house, was stopped by the others. They told her that everything happening was her fault, and she didn't deserve to thrive alone. Dr. Zhouer once again reminded them that without medicine it was certain death, and she left, leaving one of the injured boys behind. The smart guy with glasses, however, wasn't giving up. He suggested they go ahead with their plan to spread the rumor that Jiang Yi had plenty of food. He argued that once Chen Jiang and the others raided Jiang Yi's house, they could get the medicine they needed. Yuqing, however, was opposed to using Jiang Yi's brother in such a way. The other girl made it clear that if she didn't comply, she would lose her teeth. So the plan continued. They posted pictures and videos Jiang Yi had sent, showing how much food he had. Chen Jiang, seeing this, couldn't contain his excitement. "That's perfect. I can get revenge for the leg," he thought. The residents, seeing the messages in the building group, began to demand that Jiang Yi distribute his supplies, with Aunt Lin asking for food and another mother even requesting him to be her son's godfather. Jiang Yi, however, wasn't having it. He sent an audio message to the group, eating as he spoke. He coldly replied, "I'm eating. I wouldn't feed animals and I won't help anyone." Ignoring the chaos outside, Jiang Yi stared out the window at the falling snow, feeling the monotony of staying home every day. He briefly thought about taking the snowmobile out for a ride, but his phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Zhouer. She explained that her supplies had run out, and she was wondering if he was open to negotiating. She shared how, in her previous life, she had died because she gave her last food to a mother with a hungry baby. Jiang Yi remembered her as a good person, but couldn't help thinking that the smarter someone was, the more dangerous they could be. "We didn't want to take any chances and end up dead again." His reply was straightforward. "I can provide supplies, but you'll need to trade something for them." Dr. Zhouer responded, suggesting that if he provided food, she would participate in a consultation with him. Jiang Yi, however, countered with a different deal. He could give her food and medicine, but she would have to become his spy and inform him about the plans of the residents. He made it clear that it was her choice: follow the crowd and die like everyone else or stand by his side. After some thought, Dr. Zhouer decided to accept his offer. The first step was taken and she was now on his side. Meanwhile, the group of residents, still desperate and without any food, were getting more aggressive. The smart guy with glasses sent one final threat. "Jiang Yi, where are you? Last chance. Are you going to deliver the supplies or not?" Jiang Yi, unbothered, trolled the group, saying his food had just run out. The smart guy's threat only fueled the tension, and soon Chen Jiang made a new group with plans to raid Jiang Yi's house and steal everything he had. Dr. Zhouer and Uncle Yu were in the group, and they decided to warn Jiang Yi. Confident that Dr. Zhouer was cooperating with him, Jiang Yi told her not to get caught up in the mob mentality. He assured her that he had plans to defend himself. The next morning, a group of armed residents marched toward his house, shouting that they needed to kill the selfish one. They began hammering at his door with all their might. Watching through the security cameras, Jiang Yi activated his high-voltage defense system. Those who were too close were electrocuted, dying instantly. The others, terrified, tried to flee, but were stopped by Chen Jiang and his gang, who ordered them to keep breaking down the door or face death. To motivate the residents, the smart guy with glasses, full of rage, suggested that they needed to kill Jiang Yi to avenge the neighbors he had just killed. Inside, there was a fireplace and plenty of food, which only fueled their anger. The residents grabbed a wooden log and continued trying to break down the door. Jiang Yi, now drinking wine, decided to have a little fun. He played action music through his sound system, mocking them with the soundtrack of their futile efforts. The residents, still not understanding the door's strength, kept trying. After what felt like an eternity, the door was only scratched, and they were exhausted and fainting from hunger. One of the residents, confused and curious, examined the door with a magnifying glass and realized that it was made from the same material as a bank vault. "A door like this, not even a tank could knock it down," he muttered. Jiang Yi, on the other side of the door with his crossbow ready, aimed carefully at the man's throat. He didn't feel guilty for the attack. It was simply self-defense. The smart guy with glasses who had survived the chaos calmed down and came up with a new plan. While the steel door was thick and unyielding, the wall next to it was made of cement bricks. The residents understood his plan and began hammering at the wall. Cracks appeared and a metallic sound echoed through the area. But when the smart guy went to check, he was horrified to find that the walls were also lined with steel. Zhang Yi had prepared for this. Everyone was stunned by the sight of the impenetrable fortress that Zhang Yi had built. No one could understand why someone would go to such lengths, adding steel to the walls and reinforcing the entire apartment. It became clear that Zhang Yi must have known about the coming apocalypse, which made his fortress a calculated and strategic move. The residents, filled with despair, realized that no matter what they did, they would never be able to break through his defenses. On a moment of desperation, two of the neighbors exchanged a brief, hungry look and briefly considered eating each other, but the thought quickly passed. One resident remembered that his apartment's balcony was made of glass, which sparked a new idea. The group, fueled by hope, decided to try and break through the balcony to get inside. Using wooden planks from the neighboring apartment, they attempted to pry their way in. Unfortunately, the glass was bulletproof and their efforts were futile. Zhang Yi, watching from inside, calmly observed their struggle. As they froze in the bitter cold, he took a Molotov cocktail and threw it into a hole in the wall, which landed right on their heads. The flames ignited in an instant, and the residents screamed in agony, their hopes dashed. The fire spread quickly, and those who managed to escape the fire tried to flee back to the neighboring apartment, but the others blocked their path for fear of burning themselves. In the chaos, those who didn't fall off the planks took the opportunity to warm up briefly, but the damage had already been done. Later, the residents, now remorseful, returned to the balcony, begging for food. Zhang Yi, unfazed, showed them a plate of warm pasta just to see their desperate hunger. He taunted them with it, placing the plate on the table in front of them, letting them drool. Then, with a smirk, he told them that whoever brought Chen Zhang's head to him would receive food for a week. The residents' eyes immediately turned to Chen Zhang, who was in the neighboring apartment. Everyone, including those behind him, understood that killing Chen Zhang meant food and survival for a while. Chen Zhang, realizing the danger, locked the door to his apartment. But before he could make a move, Zhang Yi put out a notice in the building group, offering a reward of a week's worth of food for anyone who could kill Chen Zhang. The next morning, a group of residents, thin and starving, waited to ambush him. Armed with a pistol, they managed to surprise Chen Zhang and his loyal followers, taking them down. Both were left lying on the ground, and one of Zhang Yi's men ordered them to be stored as food. Chen Zhang, though injured in the attack, called Dr. Zhou'er to treat his wound. She tended to him, but made it clear that it wouldn't be for free. Chen Zhang offered her food, but she refused, stating she would rather starve than eat what was prepared. He sarcastically remarked that she would be the last person to become food in the building. Despite his comments, Dr. Zhou'er tried to leave, but Chen Zhang insisted that she couldn't go until he was healed. She sat quietly in the corner, listening to the discussions of his men, who were plotting their next move against Zhang Yi. Dr. Zhou'er, understanding the grave situation, knew she had to act quickly. She excused herself, saying she needed to use the bathroom, but instead she secretly communicated with Zhang Yi, informing him of the plans she overheard. Meanwhile, Chen Zhang's men went to the neighboring apartment to raid for food and steal. The unsuspecting couple who lived there were brutally killed in cold blood, and the resources were taken. Chen Zhang, ever cautious, told Dr. Zhou'er that he couldn't afford to have any predators around his home, as they might try to hunt him down next. Dr. Zhou'er was beginning to understand just how dire things had become in the building. The friends of Yuqing who had been hit by the arrows were suffering from serious infections. Without medicine, their wounds festered, and the cold was the only thing numbing their pain. Zhou Pang, desperate and still hoping for a chance with Yuqing, kept asking his cousin to try convincing Zhang Yi one more time, but she firmly believed it was useless. Days passed and Zhang Yi continued to eat, completely unaffected by the suffering around him. Meanwhile, Chen Zhang, increasingly paranoid, feared an ambush as he ate more and more. Zhang Yi, aware of the escalating situation, called Zhou'er to check on her. She informed him that Chen Zhang had gone mad, people were starving, and he had begun invading houses to steal whatever food was left. Worse, he was keeping the dead for later. Zhou'er had gone without food for days and was desperate for help. Zhang Yi thought for a moment, realizing how valuable Zhou'er was. In a world where competent doctors were rare, she was a treasure. He decided to help her but gave her one final task before she could come to his house. Meanwhile, Zhou Pang, desperate and clinging to hope, knocked at Zhang Yi's door, begging for food for Yuqing, the girl he had once loved and rejected him. Jiang Yi coldly responded that Zhou Pang's tetanus had already advanced too far, and the medicines wouldn't help him anymore. Zhou Pang, in desperation, ran to Yuqing's room. He kneeled and asked her to marry him, but she rejected him violently. She slapped him and made it clear she belonged to Jiang Yi. Heartbroken, Zhou Pang made a vow to go to hell for her. As this turmoil unfolded, Dr. Zhou'er was busy in the kitchen. She promised to make a decent meal for the men holding her captive, but little did they know it wasn't regular meat. She added something to the soup and stirred it, forcing herself not to vomit. Once the soup was served, she made sure to serve herself a bowl too before retreating to her room. The medicine she had added took effect quickly, and within minutes the men were fast asleep. Relieved, she sent a message to Jiang Yi, reporting that the plan had worked. Jiang Yi, watching through the cameras, responded with instructions. He wanted her to move the men to the balcony. Dr. Zhou'er was hesitant, wondering if this meant he intended to kill them. But Jiang Yi tossed her a rope, indicating that she was to tie everyone to the balcony railing. She tried to bargain, questioning whether she could trust him, but Jiang Yi made it clear that this was her only choice. Reluctantly, she complied, throwing Chen Zhang's gun at Jiang Yi after checking its magazine. Jiang Yi examined the gun, confirming it was the same weapon used by Chen Zhang. He then grabbed a water hose and threw water onto the balcony, waking the men up. As the water fell, they screamed in shock, realizing they had been drugged and were now tied up. Chen Zhang cursed Jiang Yi repeatedly, but the cold water turned him into a frozen statue. Dr. Zhou'er, weak and exhausted, managed to call Jiang Yi, letting him know that the task was complete. A few minutes later, she stood outside Jiang Yi's door, watching through the security cameras. Jiang Yi, ever cautious, still wanted to ensure there were no risks. He instructed her to open the heavy door and enter, while he pointed the gun at her. Dr. Zhou'er finally entered Jiang Yi's apartment, her body weary from the tense night. The warmth inside was a relief after the cold. Jiang Yi approached her from behind, making it clear that things weren't over yet. He had to ensure they weren't hiding anything from each other. Flushing with embarrassment, Zhou'er knew exactly what he wanted. She removed everything, leaving only her underwear, ensuring there was nothing hidden from his view. Jiang Yi seemed satisfied and led her to a room where she would shower and change into fresh clothes. As Zhou'er showered, Jiang Yi took the opportunity to confiscate all the items from the medical kit, maintaining his cautious approach. Afterward, when she emerged dressed in pajamas, Jiang Yi made her sit down, instructing her to dry her hair. He reminded her that her compliance was important, as her value to him depended on her obedience. If she broke the rules, there would be no mercy. She understood the consequences. Jiang Yi then decided to share his secret. He revealed that, unlike everyone else, he had access to resources that no one else did. He took out bread from the dimensional storeroom, showing her that if she betrayed him, she would be left with nothing, no food, and ultimately no survival. Zhou'er, moved by this revelation, understood how Jiang Yi had been able to live so comfortably and even cried with emotion while eating. With her basic needs met, Jiang Yi made it clear that she would now be responsible for all household chores. She hesitated at first, but the scoundrel interrupted, making it clear that her companionship and assistance in the tasks were expected. And they would now be a couple in every sense of the word, including sharing intimate moments. The next day, Jiang Yi looked at Zhou'er still asleep and remarked how pleasant it was to have a woman around in such dire times. After she dressed, they went to breakfast, living a life that now felt more luxurious than before the apocalypse. Jiang Yi threw her one of the special cold coats and handed her a baseball bat. He reminded her that she still had work to do. Despite helping to freeze the men outside the previous day, now Zhou'er had to go and destroy the frozen bodies without question. She did as instructed, bashing the frozen remains while Jiang Yi filmed her work. His intention was clear: to send the video to the residents group, showing them that their tormentor Chen Zhang was now in pieces. The residents in their homes did not question Zhou'er's presence or the grim task she was doing. They celebrated her actions, praising her without hesitation. Amid this, Jiang Yi received a call from Yuqing, who, with a crazed look in her eyes, revealed that she had heard about Chen Zhang's death. She claimed to be ready to be Jiang Yi's woman now, and that she had been prepared to kill for him. As Yuqing spoke, her friends could be heard in the background preparing to kill her. Jiang Yi took advantage of the moment to mess with her mind. He sent her a picture of Zhou'er, now claiming her as his fiancée. When Yuqing saw the message, her mind began to spiral further. Yuqing, feeling utterly betrayed, broke free from her two friends and rushed to the phone. There she saw the image of Jiang Yi with his girlfriend and her mind snapped. In her desperation, she declared her love for him, saying that she loved him more than anyone else. But Jiang Yi, cold and emotionless, threw it back in her face, telling her that she didn't matter, and that the one he loved was the woman with him now. He then hung up on her, leaving her shattered. Her friends, seeing how far gone she was, didn't even want to hit her anymore. They were furious with her for planning to live with Jiang Yi, leaving them to get stuck in their miserable situation. But now they were all in the same position, and it seemed that Jiang Yi's manipulation had worked as intended. After hearing how much Yuqing had suffered, Jiang Yi asked his little girlfriend if he had been too cruel. She responded that whether he was or not didn't matter, he had his reasons. She explained how she had first heard about him when she went to help the two girls and how, despite everything, she believed Jiang Yi was right in his actions. In the cruel world they now lived in, survival came first and Jiang Yi's methods, while harsh, were effective. Meanwhile, in another building, a person decided they couldn't bear the weight of the world anymore and attempted to jump from the building, but their action went unnoticed by the two. Soon after, Jiang Yi's phone rang. It was his Uncle Yu, and he sounded cheerful. Jiang Yi was relieved to hear that his uncle had survived everything, thanks to the supplies Jiang Yi had warned him to store before the apocalypse. However, Uncle Yu wasn't alone. He was with Sheila Mei, the single mother from before, and her sick son. They needed medicine. Jiang Yi, though, was cautious and only agreed to help because of his respect for his uncle. He told his uncle to come and pick up the medicine later. When Uncle Yu and Sheila arrived, Jiang Yi didn't open the door. Instead, he threw the medicine through a small opening in the door, and his uncle thanked him for the help. However, Sheila pressed for more, asking to come inside so her baby could warm up by the fireplace. Jiang Yi, reluctant to let them in, lied that his coal had run out, and that he and his girlfriend had enough coats to stay warm. Uncle Yu reluctantly accepted Jiang Yi's refusal, but Sheila persisted. She even tried to manipulate the situation by suggesting that Jiang Yi's girlfriend Zhou'er was with him, and that was the only reason she was staying there. Blushing, Zhou'er felt the weight of the lie, but Jiang Yi stood firm. Eventually, Uncle Yu grew tired of the conversation, expressing his gratitude for the medicine and leaving. As they left, Jiang Yi was mentally exhausted. The situation with Sheila had drained him. He couldn't help but reflect on how, in his past life, this woman had survived by exploiting others. But now he was too tired to care. He laid his head in his girlfriend's lap, staring out at the view, knowing that Sheila's presence could easily disrupt his plans. Later, when Uncle Yu returned home, he confronted Sheila, telling her that she had abused his nephew's trust. Sheila tried to defend herself, claiming that everything she did was for her baby's sake. But Uncle Yu reminded her that if it weren't for Jiang Yi's foresight in preparing for the apocalypse, they would have nothing. When she continued to badmouth Jiang Yi, he snapped, warning her that there were limits to his patience, and if she didn't stop, she would be alone. The next morning, a new threat emerged. People from a neighboring building had dug a tunnel under the snow to reach Jiang Yi's building. They were seen as enemies the moment they arrived, and the first unfortunate soul was shot dead. The group, aware of the sturdy door, brought dynamite in an attempt to break through. One of them lit the fuse and ran, but the explosion only caused minimal damage. The noise of the explosion woke Jiang Yi, and he quickly checked the security cameras. He saw that the construction workers who lived nearby had come to test their luck. They were certain the explosion would destroy the door, but to their frustration, nothing happened. Jiang Yi, angered by their attempt to take what was his, began planning his next move. Jiang Yi, with his usual cunning, retaliated with malice. He solved the cold problem with a grenade, warming up the enemies he had just incapacitated. Afterward, he used his Glock to put several more of them to sleep. His limited ballistic supplies were running low, and it became clear to him that the people from other buildings must know about his stockpile of supplies and were coming after it too. These violent noises, the explosions and gunshots, left Zhou'er, the doctor, visibly shaken. She had never experienced such chaos before, and it dawned on her that these sounds, the violence, were now a regular part of their new reality. Embarrassed, she masked her fear and resumed her work. Jiang Yi, ever the strategist, quickly realized he needed to act. In the residence group, people were asking about the loud noises, and Jiang Yi, always clever, explained that the noise came from residents of another building who had tried to blow up his house. He added that they had been trying to rob everyone, but he had driven them off. Everyone in the group expressed gratitude for his actions. Still thinking ahead, Jiang Yi called his uncle for more information. His uncle informed him that the group that had attacked was from another building and led by a man named Wang Tanfong. This group had done the same thing as Chun Jiang, overturned the residence, took control of the building, and stole food. Jiang Yi knew that this would not be the last time they would try to take what was his. They would be back for revenge. He made it clear to his uncle that the group had many followers and would certainly return to challenge them again. Jang Yi suggested they needed to unite the neighboring residents and prepare to defend themselves. He then had a private conversation with Joer, expressing his suspicions that, if given the chance, the other residents would betray him. He tasked her with gathering intelligence on the other building groups alongside Uncle Yu. Days passed and Joer, now disguised as a maid, reported back with valuable information. She had learned that the strongest groups in the neighborhood were from Building A, the one that had attacked them previously, and another group from Building B. There were also groups from 2 other buildings that seemed to be strong, but hadn't made any moves yet. Jang Yi quickly deduced that the residents of the neighboring buildings were turning on each other rather than uniting, which significantly weakened their threat. Grateful for her hard work, Jang Yi instructed Joer to continue gathering information. Though she blushed at his praise, she knew her role was vital. The situation took a turn when the group from Building A returned to the building. They began overrunning other apartments, leaving behind a chilling message. As long as Jang Yi stayed in the building, all the residents would die. This news quickly spread, disrupting Jang Yi and Joer's quiet time together. The building's residents, now in a panic, demanded that Jang Yi take action. Seeing their desperation, Jang Yi's anger flared again. He sent texts and audio messages to the group, telling them that their lives meant nothing to him and that they needed to defend themselves. Shortly afterward, he called his uncle to discuss the next steps. He told his uncle that the gang from Building A was large but still manageable, and if they joined forces, they could fight them off. Uncle Yu agreed, and Jang Yi organized a meeting in the group chat. He told everyone that he had been surviving better than most, being well-fed and strong. He presented himself as the only one who had the energy and resources to lead them in the fight against the rival building group. He made it clear that if everyone agreed to follow his orders, he would help them defend themselves. Most of the residents, desperate to survive, agreed to follow him. Jang Yi was calm, knowing that taking the risks would be necessary. He told them that if they didn't act now, they would soon be overrun by the group from Building A. With Uncle Yu's encouragement, the residents finally agreed to unite under Jang Yi's leadership. Jang Yi convinced the group to follow his lead, assuring them that if they trusted him, he'd find a way to get food. He mentioned there were vehicles capable of traveling through the snow, and if they allowed him to go, he could bring back supplies. The neighbors, desperate to survive and hoping for food, agreed to do whatever it took, even if it meant risking their lives. Everyone quickly accepted Jang Yi as the leader, now seeing him as their savior. For his first trip outside, Jang Yi geared up in a special cold-resistant outfit, ready for the challenge. Just as Jur suggested joining him, he told her no, reassuring her he trusted her to stay behind. But the moment he left, someone in the building used their powers to steal all the supplies. He quickly made his way down to the 4th floor, and with the snow piled high, anyone trying to walk outside would be lost to the cold. Fortunately, he had a snowmobile hidden in his dimensional space. Some people saw him pulling the snowmobile out, and others might have just seen him riding it, but no one was sure. Jang Yi's destination was the Chanu City police station. Breaking in was easy, and once inside, he found the officers who had frozen to death, their bodies a grim reminder of how brutal the cold had been. Respecting their sacrifice, Jang Yi covered the bodies before looking around for the keys. With them, he gained access to the weapon storage, which was a treasure trove of supplies. He filled his dimensional space with weapons and ammunition, knowing they'd be useful. Next, he set out to find food for his group. Heading to the mall, he dug through the snow until he reached the roof. After breaking in, he looted the supermarket, gathering whatever was still edible frozen fruits and meats, but it was enough for those with nothing else. He packed it up and made his way back to the building. When he returned, the leader of the building, green with envy, watched as Jang Yi effortlessly made it back with the food. The residents who had heard the snowmobile and seen it were also impressed, especially Uncle Yu, who was overjoyed to see his nephew had returned with so much. Jang Yi made it clear how tough it had been to get the food and warned them it wasn't easy. The leader, holding a gun, ordered everyone to hand over their food or face the consequences. His first order was simple: steal more food and eliminate anyone who got in their way. Anyone who killed would be rewarded with food. The residents, desperate for food, charged at the building's gang, attacking them with ferocity. They had no idea how the weak and fearful had suddenly become so ruthless. Jang Yi and Jur watched as the building's residents won, celebrating their victory. Some survivors fled back to their building, while the wounded were left behind. Jur, knowing she could help the wounded, hesitated because she knew it would cost valuable resources. But deep down, she knew Jang Yi wouldn't allow it. This raises the question: Is Jang Yi a villain, an anti-hero, or just someone doing whatever it takes to survive? From here on out, he would use everyone around him in a calculating way. And with that, the video ends. Don't forget to subscribe for part 2 and drop a comment below telling us what you think about the protagonist. Is he a hero, an anti-hero, or a villain? We'd love to hear your thoughts.